Welcome to the world of 1984, except it's in 2036. Welcome to The Fire Rises Over the World. Now, we will start with the Government of National Salvation, a broad-spanning empire consisting of the beginnings of the former U.S. government under Biden, having went under his Kali Yuga persona, in a sense, known as the true Government of National Salvation. Now, heading off, their capital is in the White House in the Pentagon, under the District of Columbia Operation Zone Kali Yuga. It's the original states that remain loyal to the cause. Of course, let's start with many of the other areas. We have different zones of operations in what is basically Oceania. Operation Zone Achilles, Operation Zone Ajax, stretching from Texas to the Midwest. Odysseus, basically the naval front, stretching from the half of the Midwest to California and Oregon and Washington State. Having seized Bermuda and other British territories in the process of its recent rise. The Government of National Salvation is led by a fascist ultranationalist regime under the Democrats' National Purification Committee, Americanists, under the former right-wing grifter Richard Spencer, who declared loyalty to Supreme Leader Biden in 2020, having won out in the struggles and courted Biden's attention as a new leader, enforcing a fascist-like vision onto America, with perpetual peacekeeping, anti-partisan divisions, the eye of providence, and he is a political showman. The economy is around $37.003 trillion, and the military is massive, 623 divisions, 58 ships, 4,000 planes. The industry is decently impressive. But what's more impressive is the vast amount of manpower they have through the depth to U.S. parts and American conscription services, conscripting every part of their empire, from the British Isles to southern Africa, all the way to the tip of Brazil. Although there is some resistance under the new regime, under the Argentine Republic of Sergio Massa, a federal Peronism, social democracy still resisting in a harsh terrain of Argentina, alongside Chile, under the democratic socialists, under the Grupo Dignidad, the mountainous terrain having shielded them mostly, and the Americanists having to deal with multiple state-level insurgencies in Africa. The Federal Republic of Ethiopia, Somaliland, and Somaliland as well, Somalia and Somaliland, have survived mostly due to the fact that they are isolated from the three superpowers other than Eurasia, of course. Having survived in the coalition of the East African Pact, they stand as the last source of national liberalism and libertarianism of the old order in the African continent. Now Eurasia, under the imperialist, neo-Bolshevist Alexander Dugin, stretching from Kamchatka all the way to Portugal, and all the way to the shores of Morocco, and all the way to Iran, and the shores of Yemen, and all the way to Pakistan. The Eurasian state, having originally been the Russian Federation and lost against Ukraine in their expansionist wars, rebounded under Dugin and conquered all of Europe in a swift and terrifying motion. Compared to the previous regime, they are still pretty apocalyptic and totalitarian, under a totalitarian socialist regime, a totalitarian party state, and and extremely advanced Eurasian armed forces to the wing. 179 trillion, absorbing all of Europe, North Africa, Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, etc., and Russia, Ukraine, and under a similar command economy to the Government of National Salvation. They stand as a rival to government, having the population of 1.65 billion, but with less manpower due to having not so harsh conscription laws as the Americanists. Now, for a fourth, and the weakest power out of all of them, is the Akhtan Bharat. After the Indian Civil War plagued India right after China had them collapse during the Great Pacific War, or the Second Great Pacific War, but they were reunited by the ultranationalists, the Hindu nationalists to be exact. Although much of their territory has been reduced from the neo-Bolshevists capturing Pakistan and parts of India to the national collective movements in China, having conquered Bengal and parts of northern Sikkim in India, they stand as a pretty decently strong power, and are in a tentative alliance with the Government of National Salvation due to both being fascist, ultranationalist regimes in a traditional sense. The National Collectivist movement, under the Heavenly Father, is the final superstate, under obliteration of self, or the obliteration of self. Having originated from Ordos and Shaanxi, they managed to reconquer all of China, and through a brutal and devastating war in East Asia that resulted in the deaths of millions, again, a third Pacific War. They conquered Japan, Korea, Taiwan, parts of India and Bengal, and of course the Philippines for local obliterationist uprisings. Compared to all the other two superpowers, they are the weakest out of all of them, unless you count Akhtan Bharat, who are their natural rivals. Although crippled and weakened, they are still a somewhat prominent foe, resisting in Southeast Asia, alongside some of the other areas, such as in East Asia, in Southeast Asia to be exact. And in Eurasia, the main resistors are Oman, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, who use their oil money to fund proxy movements and bribe border guards. The remnants of the Pacific Defense Treaty under Japan fell back to Southeast Asia, under Burma, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia. The previous fascist regimes in Australia and New Zealand that formed after China won the First Asian War in Taiwan were absorbed by the Americanists. They remain a bulwark against the national collectivist movement and are tentatively supported by India, their old comrades. In this world, the regimes haven't solidified and there is still some hope. It has only been 6